At the Super Bowl out in San Francisco. He took a group of students, which would have included Dr. Webb's son Bjorn, was a part of that memorable trip as well. But some of our students have gone to NASCAR, PGA golf events, etc., working on things like data science for those professional organizations. He's going to talk to us a little bit today about his role in sports business management. Dexter has been the professor and program coordinator for the sport business program at the University of Tennessee at Martin. And they are recognized literally around the nation for the work that they're doing. And just this last year, he was chosen by his peers as the faculty member of the year of all of UT Martin. So we are privileged to have him here today. He would love to hear from you, so feel free to ask questions along the way. But Dexter, blessed to have you. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. So, I got introduced. Now I have to introduce a couple of people. So there's another young man that actually 8 years ago was a freshman in college, not at Houghton, but at another institution. We won't tell him where because we don't want him to yell as a community. My son Dylan, his wife Miranda, and their little guy Drew. They are Houghtonites. They live up on Tucker Hill. They live in the middle of the Amish community. So they are here to give me support. And my fiance, Faye Seymour, who is also a Houghton grad. Now, we had this conversation with Dr. Webb and Carl earlier. I don't remember Faye. We were at Houghton at the same time. I graduated in '82. She graduated in '83. I do not remember her from Houghton. So when we started dating, we got talking, and it's like, yeah, I know that guy, and I know that guy, and you know my roommate, and so they're here to support me, and I appreciate that because they have all given me inspiration in what I do. So I have a quick PowerPoint, but I'd really like to, after that, get into question and answer and talk about the sport industry and what it means and kind of just have a conversation amongst ourselves about the future of the sport industry. There's a lot of crazy things happening. I just recently came back from the Super Bowl in Las Vegas to share stories. I will, so I'll pass this around if I can find it. 300 of these are given out to 20,000 people that work at the Super Bowl. So about halftime of the Super Bowl this year, a guy walked up to me and he said, "Are you Dexter Davis?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I am. It's on my credentials. You can read it and see what it said." He said, "I have something for you from the commission. This is in recognition of the work that, not that I do, but the work that my students do at the Super Bowl." So I'll just pass this around. It's kind of a cool little memento keepsake. You haven't even seen it, have you? Have you seen it? We'll let you start over there. So I have a lecture that I like to give and talk about and spend some time with today. Just a little bit of background. I spend a lot of time in airports and on airplanes. I do a lot of traveling for my job. I do a lot of traveling back to New York to spend time with my family. My parents live in Rushford. My fiance lives in Gainesville. My son and his family live here in Houghton. So I spend a lot of time on airplanes. Probably 7 or 8 years ago, I picked up this book by Andy Stanley. And while I wish I was the guy that had thought up these great ideas, I'm not. I got to give Andy Stanley all kinds of credit. And when I picked up the book, and this, I don't know what this says about me. I hope it doesn't say anything bad. When I picked up the book, I did not know that Andy Stanley was a minister, that he was the pastor of North Point Ministries in the Georgia area. So I picked up this book because my academic research at that point in time had been in leadership. My doctoral dissertation is on the correlation or the relationship between athletic directors' leadership styles. You paying attention to this, Dr. Webb?
Listen.
So my dissertation was about the correlation relationship between athletic directors' leadership style, and coaches' levels of job satisfaction. And that's what I wrote my doctoral dissertation on, and I've done some other research in the area of leadership. But I'm always looking for good leadership books, and I'm always looking for good books about leadership. And when I read so I walked into a bookstore in an airport, and all I could read on the spine was Next Generation Leader. Had no idea who Andy Stanley was, just sounded like a really good book. I was shocked, and that's kind of terrible to say, but right, I was shocked when I got done that this guy wrote this incredible leadership book as a minister, because it really isn't spiritually based. It really is about the things that lead to leadership. And so I've stolen a lot of his ideas, and my spin on this is from another book that I picked up that I'm actually still in the process of reading by Adam Grant, called Think Again. And I picked that book up a couple Tuesdays ago when I was sitting in the airport in Nashville getting ready to fly to Las Vegas for the Super Bowl. I was looking for something to keep me occupied on the 4 hours between Nashville and Las Vegas. And basically the premise of the book, as I've gotten as far as I have, is that sometimes our best ideas occur when we re-examine our previous thoughts and our previous prejudices and our previous ideas. And so when I was thinking about what I would say to you all today, and notice I didn't say y'all, because there are people in this room that will give me a hard time about saying that. It's accepted in a classroom in Tennessee. I don't know about a classroom in Houghton. So as I was thinking about what I was going to present today, I really started to rethink this idea of the typical lecture that I do is about leadership and what we're going to talk about today. And what I really started to see is that leadership is about success. And Carl asked me to talk about success in the sport business industry. And so I kind of put my spin on Andy Stanley's thoughts and want to talk about what defines or what leads to ultimate success. So I see I have a screw up on my PowerPoint already, a couple of them, right? So a couple words got cut off. So basically what I'm going to talk about today are these 5 items. You'll notice at the center it is having a strong character, okay? But around that there are different areas of concern or different areas of concentration or different areas of thought where we can help ourselves be successful. So be courageous. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Provide clarity. Be coachable. And develop competence. But central to all of that is having a strong character. So we're going to leave that for last and spend some time talking about that at the end of our lecture. So this is for Dylan. This is an homage to Dylan because Dylan and I used to watch John Wayne movies when he was a kid. So I always like to start with this one. Everybody's got some kind of fear. And you know what? Leadership is a fearful thing. Is something that invokes fear in a lot of people. And we'll talk more about this as we go through the material today. But so what that you're afraid? Everybody's afraid. If we went around this room and I asked you individually if you felt comfortable with that, every one of you would have something that you're afraid of. So I live in a house in Tennessee that has no basement. It's got a crawl space. And Faye will tell you, she was there this summer, I'm scared to death of that crawl space. I needed to crawl under that house and hook up a dryer hose. I was scared to death. I'm not ashamed to say that I shook when I started to crawl into that crawl space. I don't know why. I honestly don't. Because I know the house has a good foundation. I get it checked for termites every 6 months. I don't live in an earthquake zone. I don't know why I have that fear, but I do. But you know what? That stinking dryer hose wasn't going to connect itself. And I had to crawl under there and connect that dryer hose. And I noticed the other day, it has come unhooked. And so I'm going to have to crawl under there again. And I'm not going to do it. And this is how irrational that fear is. I will not crawl under that crawl space unless there is somebody at my house to pull me out when the house collapses. So my point is, so what, right? Things have to be done. To be successful, we have to do things. And a lot of those things that we have to do invoke fear. And so John Wayne, in his John Wayne wisdom, had a statement that said, courage is being scared to death and saddling up anyway. So now it's Faye's turn. Faye's a horse lady. And I won't tell stories, but I will tell you that Faye broke her hand and still had to get on a horse. That to me is scary. And I think to her it was a little bit scary because she didn't have the handle that she thought she had. So, as John, we can relate all of this to life. There are things that scare us to death. There are things that we are afraid of. And honestly, probably the only person that cares about that is you. Nobody in here cares that I'm scared to death to crawl under that crawl space. I mean, it makes a great story, but you really don't care. The people that you lead, the people that you're going to be working with, don't care what you're afraid of. You need to saddle up and do your job anyway. And that's one of the first steps towards being successful, is getting over that fear and being able to get on that horse, whatever that horse is, and ride it and overcome that fear. So, the next C that we want to talk about is the idea of clarity. And this is one of my favorite slides of all of the lectures that I do across all of my classes. I love that first bullet point. The only thing that's certain is the past. That's the only thing that we know for certain, is what has happened yesterday, happened 10 seconds ago. You can live there if you want, or you can move forward. Stop and think about that for a few minutes, right? The only thing that we know for certain is what's happened in the past. Now, it's up to you to decide whether you're going to live there or you're going to move on from that, right? The foundation of success is built during times of uncertainty. So, Tuesday morning, one of my sport business classes had a case study. And the case study was about strategic planning and strategic visions. And it was awesome for me to see. I do group projects a lot. And all 4 groups, it was an incredible, aha moment for everybody, because all 4 groups said, in order for this organization, we were talking about it was a case study on a real organization. The most important thing for this organization to do is to have a leader that sets a vision for them. Your success and your ability to be successful is going to be based on your ability to cast a vision. And I think we've all heard or seen some rendition of that final statement. Where there is no vision, the people perish. And I would expand that. I'm not a Bible scholar, so I can get away with ecclesiastical gymnastics. I would say we can expand that and say, where there is no vision, organizations perish. Because organizations are made up of people. And so if there's no vision for your success in that organization, you are going to struggle. And that becomes incumbent upon you as a leader, as an individual, as a person in that organization to cast a vision and to be visionary. And that's where clarity comes from, is from being able to cast a vision. So, I've been talking a lot. Anybody have any questions before we get to the end of this? Actually, I'm just trying to catch my breath. All right. So, this is always an interesting one to talk to college students about, being coachable. I'm not even sure if coachability is a word, but I made it up for this presentation. So, the first thing that you have to understand is that you're not as good as you think you are. Let that sink in for a minute. I know a lot of kids. I deal with a lot of college students. I teach at a small D1 institution. And we are the smallest budget in the FCS. But every year, I have football players in my intro class who tell me, direct quote, on numerous occasions, Dr. Davis, this class is meaningless because I'm going to be in the league next year or the following year. And I look at them and I say, you're my size. I'm a 5'8", 185 white guy. You're my size. You are not going to the league. Now, by the league, they mean the NFL. Now, you may be more athletic than I am. You may be stronger than I am. You can do more reps on a bench press. You definitely have a quicker 40 than I've got, right? My 40s are measured in sundials, but you're not as good as you think you are. And you have to grasp that. Some of the best conversations I have are when a student is 5 or 6 years out of college and calls me back up and says, hey, Dr. Davis, remember that class when we talked about this? It just happened. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the insight that I needed, right? So, I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody. I grew up, I'm a Houghton guy. I grew up on Centerville Road. Now it's Dylan's turn again. Dylan gives me a hard time and says, Dad, most people are out of college in 4 or 5 years. You've been there almost 30. There's something wrong with you. Listen to those people that have that experience. Did I embarrass you? Because you always embarrass me with that. There are people out there. I've been incredibly blessed in my life. Carl mentioned that I reconnected with Houghton. And one of the people that I reconnected with was Skip Lord. And I've had incredible mentors, one of which is I would consider Skip one of my mentors. How many of you know Dr. Tom Kettlecamp? So the two old guys. So Dr. Tom Kettlecamp took me to Honduras in 1980. I learned a lot from Tom Kettlecamp. I consider Tom Kettlecamp one of my mentors. So if you don't know Tom Kettlecamp, you obviously don't know Dr. George Wells. Dr. George Wells was one of my major professors when I was here at Houghton. I was a phys ed major. And I never got the opportunity to tell Dr. Wells how much he meant to me. And part of why I give back to Houghton College is because of the mentorship that I had from a man named George Wells. So listen to those people who can provide you with that knowledge that you need to be successful. Because you're not as good as you think you are. I have a dean today who calls me his younger brother. Dr. Tatunci is about a 5'1", 95-pound Iranian man who has his flaws. There's no doubt about that. But he also is a great mentor. He also is a man that I listen to when I have questions about academic things. Because for those of you that haven't figured it out, I'm not a real academician. I do research because I have to, not because I want to. I'd rather get out of the classroom and do the things that are active academics than sit in a classroom and lecture. But I do listen to those people who are in a position to give me advice, to give me knowledge, to help me become even better than I am. And then that last bullet point, if you don't know Dr. Wells, you don't know Dr. Kettlecamp, you certainly don't know Zora Davis. That's my grandmother. My grandmother used to live here in Houghton, down by the old barber shop. Well, probably across from the dentist office is a better way to, because probably the barber shop hasn't been a barber shop in a number of years.
Dentist office isn't a dentist office.
Yeah. Wow, so I'm really, okay. So what used to be the dentist office? My grandmother told me when I was a kid to learn something new every day. She even added to it. I keep this out of this lecture because I don't want to bring everybody down. But she added to it and she said, the day you stop learning is the day you start dying. So if you want to be good and you want to be successful, listen to those people that have the knowledge that you need and that you want. So I just beat you up and told you you weren't as good as you think you are, but now I'm going to bring you back up and tell you that everybody's good at something. Everybody has something that they're really good at. Faye doesn't believe me when I tell her this, but she's really good at making apple pie. That's part of the reason I come back to New York on a regular basis. No one's good at everything, but everybody's good at something. Find that niche. Find that thing that you're really, really good at, and then thrive. I found my niche. I don't say this out of a sense of arrogance, but I say this out of a sense of reality. I'm really good at networking. And I'm really good at finding opportunities for my students. So now it's both Faye and Dylan's turn. They both give me a hard time because we go places and people know me. So Monday at our campus in Tennessee, we had a student preview day. And we bring students in to talk to prospective students about their experience at UT Martin. I'd probably do something similar here. And so one of my, I call them Super Bowl survivors, because it is an ordeal. But one of my Super Bowl survivors said to this group of students, "You're probably not going to believe me, but Dr. Davis knows everybody." We ran into a guy who used to be a beat reporter when I was a soccer coach at SUNY Alfred, walking through Mandalay Bay. We ran into a student that I had as a doctoral student who is now the director of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the Denver Broncos. We ran into another student who actually ended up being a speaker in a networking event that I helped direct, who is the director of diversity, equity, and inclusion at New Era Caps. I'm good at making those connections. I'm not good at research. I don't even know what chi-squared is anymore. So the academicians in the room laugh because they know what I'm talking about, right? So the reality is we all have limited strengths, but we also have the opportunity to grow those strengths. And when we do things outside of our competencies, we set ourselves up for failure. And what we want to talk about today is success. And so find that thing. And it's hard. I was not a good student when I was an undergrad. I was not a good student when I was working on my master's degree. But I was a good student when I started working on my doctorate because I finally took it seriously. I finally figured it out. So start early and find those things that you're good at. Find those competencies so you're not setting yourself up for failure, but you're setting yourself up for success. And now, I hate to say this, but this is true. You don't have to have impeccable character to be a success. We all know people. Heck, the guy in front of you right now has made major mistakes in his life. Had major character flaws and character failures. But your legacy is defined by your character. And that's what success is about. It's about your legacy. What are people going to say 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 40 years from now? I've been out of Houghton 42 years. It's hard to believe. I cannot believe that I graduated from Houghton 42 years ago. But be willing, as a leader, as a person that is desiring success, be willing to make tough decisions. There are tough decisions that are going to face each and every one of us. Be willing to make those tough decisions, right? So the spotlight of leadership, the spotlight of success shines on you 24/7, 365. When you step into that role of being a leader, there's no off days. Ask Dr. Webb. There's no off day as the athletic director, is there? Ask Mr. Sisson. There's no off days being a college vice president. When you step into those roles of success and leadership, there's no off day. People are looking at you 24/7, 365. And sometimes that's hard to deal with. Sometimes you say something that you shouldn't have said. Sometimes you make a decision that you shouldn't have made. And sometimes you have to say, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. And when you have those times when your success is less than great, be willing to make that admission that you were wrong and that your character failed. So here's some final thoughts before we get into a question and answer time frame. So This industry that I deal in, the industry called sport, needs leaders of faith. Mr. Sisson, Skip Lord, Dr. Lewis, other people, and I have had this conversation. I'm going to share a real quick story with you that kind of illustrates what I'm going to say. I shouldn't even say kind of. That actually illustrates what I'm talking about. One of the things that I do that Mr. Sisson didn't mention is I take students to Florida every year, and we spend a week with the St. Louis Cardinals, the Miami Marlins, the Houston Astros, and the Washington Nationals. And we do a variety of different things with them, including working in the ticket office. And gosh, it's probably been 18 or 19 years ago when I first started doing this activity. I should back up and say one of the things that we do, it has become a joke, but it's dinner with Dr. Davis. So after these events, after our days at the Super Bowl, after our days with whatever team we're working with that day, we go out to dinner. And you get asked, what'd you learn today? Because that's what it's about. It's about learning. So we go out to dinner, and this young lady is obviously upset. And I said, Amy, tell me what's going on. I can see that you're upset about something. And she said, do you know what my job was today? And I said, I have no idea. All I know is that you were working in the ticket office. She said, do you know what my job was in the ticket office? And she's getting more and more agitated. I said, Amy, I have no idea. That's why I'm asking. I don't know what you did today. And she said, you know what, and she broke into tears. She said, you know what my job was today? My job was to make sure that wives didn't sit with girlfriends. Let that sink in for a minute. That's the kind of industry the sport industry is. Now, it's not everybody. Please don't leave here thinking that it's everybody. But the sport industry needs people of faith like you, people that have come from a place like Houghton. Houghton is equipping you with the things that you need to be able to make those character decisions and help change the culture in the industry. So, has Cal Kern ever been on this campus?
I think
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
true, but I have not personally seen it. Yeah.
Okay. So Cal Kern is a guy from Buffalo with Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Cal's son was one of the best punters in the NFL for a number of years. Cal's son retired from football a couple of years early because he was tired of the dirtiness of sport. Now, I don't know that he would tell you that outright, but based on conversations I've had with Cal, that's part of the decision. That's terrible. We hear stories about athletes that engage in domestic violence. We hear stories about athletes that engage in the use of performance-enhancing drugs. We hear all of the negative things about sport. And that's where you come in. And that's where this lecture comes in. Success is changing that culture. And Houghton is equipping you with the things that need to happen to be successful. Those things that we've talked about in this little talk today. Mr. Sisson mentioned that I recently re-engaged with Houghton, probably about 10 years ago. For many years, I wanted nothing to do with this place for a variety of reasons. But as I grew in my faith and I grew in my profession, I realized that Houghton College, which is what it was called when I was there, Houghton College, Houghton University equipped me to be the success that I am. I joke about not wanting to do research. When I wrote my doctoral dissertation, I probably should preface this by saying, I hate it. How many of you have to take principles of writing? Is that still a class?
Writing in the liberal arts.
Okay, writing in the liberal, all right. So when I was here, it was called Principles of Writing. I hated that class. I see some heads going, yeah! We're right there with you. Right? I hated that class. But when I wrote my doctoral dissertation, when I turned it in and it was finally accepted, I had 7 grammatical edits in 197 pages. Houghton College equipped me to do that. I was scared to death of public speaking. I didn't want to mention that earlier because I didn't want to set myself up for failure. I was scared to death of public speaking. And if you don't know the 3 people that I mentioned earlier, you probably don't know Lloyd Wilt. But Lloyd Wilt got me over that fear of speaking. And now, every day, 9 hours a week, I'm in front of a classroom speaking, doing public speaking. So take advantage of the things that Houghton is equipping you to do. And then finally, a couple of things. Leadership is an awesome responsibility because through leadership, which in fact will define your success, you shape the future. One of the coolest things that happens in my life is when I get a phone call or I see a post on LinkedIn or I have a connection with a student who has done amazing things. So I mentioned the young lady that's the director of diversity for New Era CAPS. Her name is Jess Turner. I'm going to give you an assignment. Go on LinkedIn and start following Jess Turner. Because she's brilliant. And she's a sweetheart. If you reach out to her and say, Jess, I'd like some information, she will get back to you. But understand that when you take on that mantle of leadership, you have that responsibility. Don't accept it lightly. Understand what your role is and how you influence people. Understand what they do. So, last thing I'm going to say, dream big and dream bold. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm a kid from Houghton. I'm just a guy who grew up in Houghton, who has had incredible opportunities in my life. I've been on every continent except Antarctica, and I have no desire to go there. I have had dinner with crown princes. I have hung out with prime ministers. One of the coolest things I ever got to do in my life was give the pre-game speech to the Thailand under-17 boys soccer team when they were going out to play in the Southeast Asian Game Championships. Now, I don't speak Thai. They don't speak English, but they won that game against Vietnam 1-0, and I take all credit. So I've had these incredible opportunities. I've gotten to travel to China. I've gotten to travel the Middle East. I've gotten to share Super Bowl 50 with my son. I've had incredible opportunities. I never dreamed that big. I knew I wanted to be a college professor. I wanted to be involved in college life because I grew up in a college town. But here's what I'm going to tell you. You got to get out of your seat. You got to do something. You can't just dream it. You actually have to take action. And so I would challenge you all to find that thing that you're good at. Develop those competencies. Understand that you're going to fail. But when you fail, get back up and move forward. But find a way to get active. And if you want to work in the sports industry, that's even better. Because you have the opportunity to do some really cool stuff. So I told Faye that there's a surprise slide at the end of my presentation. So she's going to laugh when I show it. My one concession to the 21st century. If you want my contact information, scan that QR code. You didn't think I was that intellectual or technologically advanced? I'll leave that up there. And we've got, gosh, I'm quicker than I thought I was going to be.
You want to know how much it's changed. This is how they check in, for events and chapel and everything.
Oh yeah? I had Dick Hallberg sitting next to me for 4 years, checking whether I was there or not. Yes, ma'am. You can have as many questions. We're here until 2:15, so we're going to stay here that long, even if you don't ask questions.
One question. How do you discern who to take mentorship from and who not to take from? And if someone is a good mentor, like, everybody is different, so maybe some advice that you're getting doesn't work for you. So how do you discern who to take from and what to take from?
So, interesting question, because on my flight here yesterday, I was scrolling through LinkedIn, and I just skimmed the article. I sent it to myself so that when I have some time, I can sit down and read it in more detail. But a guy that I follow on LinkedIn talked about creating your own board of directors. And I think that's, again, just briefly read through, skimmed the article, summarized it in my brain. But that's an awesome idea. That's who your mentors should be. They should be your board of directors. How many of you are business majors? So you're familiar with the concept of boards of directors. Is that a fair statement? So for those of you that are familiar, what's your perception of a board of directors? You didn't know you were going to get a quiz today, too, right? So what's your perception of the role of a board of directors? Go ahead.
I mean, for me, like my parents run a company, they have board of directors, so it's like people that run the overall decisions for how the company, like what way they're going to go.
Okay, so they provide advice.
Yeah, they have like different roles, like one's vice president, one's president of the company.
Okay.
And so
does the idea, the concept of having a personal board of directors ring true for you?
yeah.
Right? So back to your question about mentors. Mentors should be people that are going to give you advice. Now, you're right. There are people that may not have our best interest at heart, may be using us for some other nefarious purpose. But that becomes incumbent upon you to decipher that and to discern who's giving you the advice that you can follow. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Other questions? Come on, there has to be questions. You're not as good as you think you are. Go ahead.
You said you worked for the Super Bowl, right?
Yes.
What did you do?
So, our students we work with an organization called On Location Experiences. So On Location is a high-end hospitality provider. Typically, and I'll let Dylan share a little bit of his experience. So now you're on the spot, right? So typically our students work with NFL talent, whether they're current talent or Hall of Fame talent. And On Location Experiences puts on pre-game events and post-game events for fans. So typically we work in, the word I like to use is concierge. The word that the On Location people use is talent escort. That sounds bad, especially when you're in Vegas. But we work moving talent from one place to another. So go ahead and tell them your experience, Dylan.
So when we went to Super Bowl 50, I was Jim Kelly's escort handler. So prior to the game, I don't know exactly how long prior to, but I walked over to the parking garage, met him and his family at their limousine, escorted them from the parking garage to the 50-yard line. On either side of the 50-yard line at Levi's Stadium, they had a bar. So I escorted him and his family there for him to mingle around, meet with people who paid thousands upon thousands of dollars to be there. You know, got him drinks, food, whatever. And then a couple minutes before the game started, we escorted him up to his suite and dropped him off. And that was supposed to be it, but then like 2 minutes before the game ended, he called me and said he wanted me to walk him back out to his limo. So I just kind of escorted him around, got $200 of tips on a signed jersey.
You're not supposed to tell that tips thing. The jersey's okay, but the tips are. So this year, because we were in Las Vegas has professional talent handlers because there are professionals. There's talent there all the time. I was there 2 years ago for the NHL All-Star game, and I saw more celebrities from other sports than I saw from the NHL. And so there are people that's their job. They actually are employed to be talent handlers. So we didn't handle talent this year. This year we were babysitters. And I say that with all due respect. On Location has what they call an elite program. So these people that are in the elite program have paid in excess of $50,000 for the weekend. Our job was to get them from the bus that brought them to the stadium. So Super Bowl is different than a regular football game. Like, you can't drive yourself to the stadium and park. It's all closed down. You got to get through a security clearance, all that kind of stuff. Hey, little boy. So my students this year were concierges for these people that were in the elite program. We got them through security. We got them to their parties. We made sure that when they got to the parties that they were assigned to, that everything was okay. And then we got them from the party to the entrance to get them to their seats. So similar to what we do with talent, but also different because it wasn't talent. And then leading up to the Super Bowl, we do some things with the local organizing committee has, it's called the NFL Experience, which is a giant fan fest. It was in a huge convention center. They set up games, they set up interaction, sponsorship activations, fan interaction with athletes, that kind of stuff. So we worked a day there. And then I think I mentioned real briefly that this year my role has expanded, and I'm involved with a networking event. There are this year 40 colleges and universities, over 1,000 college students came into Las Vegas to assist with the Super Bowl. And so myself and 3 other faculty members organized this networking event for the college students. So we had over 600 college students at this event where they got to interact with industry professionals, had a panel discussion. We had an awesome keynote speaker, a guy named Devin Lewis Buchanan, who is the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the Oakland Raiders, or Vegas Raiders. I just aged myself. So, quite frankly, that was the most exhausting part of my Super Bowl experience, was getting that thing ready. And I'll just just to brag a little bit, we opened up, we couldn't sell tickets, the NFL wouldn't let us sell tickets, we couldn't charge, but we had to have it a ticketed event because we had it on UNLV's campus. So we opened up ticket availability on Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock. On 7 o'clock Saturday night, our first 550 tickets were gone. That's how quickly it's sold out. So we had to add some more, and we ended up with about 700 college students. Yes, sir.
What are the 3 most famous people you have met in your lifetime? I mean, you said you've talked with prime ministers and stuff, and
So, small world story. I was the soccer coach at SUNY Alfred and helped start their sport management program and transition from coaching to the faculty, because as Dr. Webb will tell you, it's not a lot of fun having 18, 19, 20-year-olds being motivated to play, being the sum total of your paycheck. Is that a fair statement?
No comment.
I know I put you on the spot too. So I was in Thailand doing a project with the Sports Authority of Thailand, and I was introduced to the Prime Minister of Thailand. And we got talking, and he said, "I understand you're from Western New York." And I said, "Yes, sir, I am." And he said, "Are you familiar with the University of Alfred?" And I said, "Alfred University?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Yes, I'm very familiar with Alfred University. At the time I was teaching at SUNY Alfred." I said, "I teach on the other side of the hill." He said, "There's somebody I want you to meet." He brought his wife out. His wife had attended Alfred University. So, pretty famous. I don't want to prejudice anybody's thoughts, but I've met Roger Goodell. Had the opportunity to have a conversation with him. I could tell you funny stories about a lot of NFL players that I've met. So, I don't know. We could be here for the next 20 minutes talking about it. So, can I share just one funny Super Bowl story? So, how many of you know who Jack Youngblood is? Anybody know who Jack Youngblood is? Okay. Again, we're aging ourselves, gentlemen. So Jack Youngblood supposedly played an NFL game on a broken leg. He's supposed to be the toughest human being ever to play in the NFL, blah, 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 blah. Jack Youngblood is a pain in the butt. So Super Bowl is in Indianapolis, and my students are doing the talent escort thing. And my student that is with Mr. Youngblood calls me up. Says, "Dr. Davis, Mr. Youngblood wants to talk to you." Now I'm going to clean up what he said to me, but basically he said, he gets on the phone and he says, "Where's my scotch?" with some colorful expletives. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "You owe me a bottle of scotch. Where is it?" And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he said very colorfully that he was not going to sign another autograph until we got him his bottle of scotch. And then he throws in at the end of it, "Contact Erin, she knows what I'm talking about." So Erin is my contact with the NFL. So I call Erin, I'm like, "Hey Erin, it's Dexter. Jack Youngblood just called, wants to know where his scotch is." He says, "You know about it?" And I hear her go, "Oh man, he actually remembered." She said, "Go up to the hospitality suite, tell him I sent you, get a bottle of scotch, deliver it to him, but tell him he can't drink it while he's signing autographs." Like, okay. So I get the bottle of scotch, I deliver it to Jack Youngblood. He says, where's my, very colorfully, my cigar? I'm like, what? You said you needed a bottle of scotch. I don't have a cigar for you. And he looks at me and with a straight face says, everybody knows you don't drink scotch unless you're smoking a cigar. I didn't know that. So that's the kind of interaction that we get to have with NFL players. Some of them are great, like Jim. Jim Kelly was great. So I'll make a categorical statement. The older guys that are out of the game, who are no longer in the public view, are great guys. The B-list players that we get that are current players are intolerable because they think that there's somebody that they're not. Right? That slide that you're not as good as you think you are is a common thought.
Dr. Davis, do you have any advice for students who are interested in going into sports information, sports marketing, that side?
Sure. So I was hoping we were going to get to that point. So sport is an industry that quite frankly, for good or for bad, relies on your network and relies on a lot of experience. I'm sure Dr. Webb would be more than happy to accept people to come volunteer to work his games and his events. Is that a fair statement?
100%.
Get out and get experience. Take chances. Get your name, get your face, get your talents in front of other people. So there's this saying that is common in the business world, the business community. It's not what you know, it's who you know. That's incorrect. It's not who you know, it's who knows you. So I'll share the story about how I ended up in Tennessee. I had done a presentation at a conference about 3 years before I went to Tennessee about experiential education, which is now my research focus. And so I do a little research for those academic additions in the room. So I had done a presentation about experiential education, and I had exchanged business cards with a lady from UT Martin. Honestly, I put that business card in my pocket and never thought about Mary again. Okay, we just exchanged business cards, never really reconnected with her, never kept in contact with her. I get a phone call from a guy named Sam Fullerton, who is a widely recognized sports marketing guy. And Sam said, hey, I just got off the phone with Mary. UT Martin is looking for somebody. They're really looking for you. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, they've got a position open. They really want to talk to you. I have never heard of the University of Tennessee at Martin. For those of you that don't know, it is in the, better than me explain, because I lived there. You explain it.
No, it's western Tennessee near the Kentucky border and almost literally in the middle of nowhere. It's
Soybean fields.
yeah.
So we are 10 minutes from the Kentucky, I almost said Kentucky, Pennsylvania, the Kentucky and Tennessee border, about 2.5 hours northwest of Nashville, about an hour and 45 minutes northeast of Memphis.
Somewhere near the catfish capital of the world.
Yes. Paris, Tennessee, which has its own little Eiffel Tower. So anyway, I had never heard of this place. And I kind of thought it was a joke. I thought Sam was giving me a hard time because I was looking for a job. And I went out there, did an interview, got a traffic ticket on my way. Long, interesting story, but they made me an offer. And that offer was based solely on the fact that this woman, who had been a part of of my network, so to speak, had recommended that I be the person to contact for this job. It doesn't just happen in academia. It happens in the sport industry. That the connections that you make, those of you that are athletes, make sure you talk to the opposing coaches if you have the opportunity so that they know who you are. Volunteer, take opportunities, take chances. So I teach by telling stories, if you haven't figured that out. So I'll tell you another story real quick. So I mentioned that I was teaching at SUNY Alfred. How many of you are familiar with SUNY Alfred? Popular place that you want to go to school? So we had started a sport management program, and I had gone to a conference, and these guys at this conference were talking about, they have something similar to what Houghton has. They have a May term, and they would take a group of students. There used to be a minor league baseball team in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the person that was the general manager, these guys were actually from Liberty University. And the guy that was the general manager of the baseball team in Albuquerque, New Mexico, was a Liberty University grad. And so they would take students for the month of May to help out, like we do at spring training, with baseball games at Albuquerque's minor league baseball team. And I got back from that conference, and I reached out to my department chair, and I said, listen, we're a new program. We're never going to compete with SUNY Cortland. We're never going to compete with SUNY Brockport. But we have to do something to compete for students. Here's my idea. And my idea was, students like to go to Florida for spring break. Why don't we make it educational? So I pitched the idea to him. I took a chance. And he said, if you can get somebody to bite on this, I'll support you. So I sent a letter to every spring training coordinator for Major League Baseball. Now this is where it gets crazy. The girl that was the administrative assistant for the spring training coordinator for the St. Louis Cardinals was from Cornell, New York. She opened my letter solely because her mom was a secretary at SUNY Alfred. And she said, why is this guy from SUNY Alfred, right? You know, why is this letter coming to my boss from SUNY Alfred? So, long story short, I flew to Florida for about 4 days, met with the executives of the stadium, set up this deal. We've been going ever since. March 12th, I go back to Florida for, I think it's the 22nd or 23rd year. You have to take those kinds of chances. You have to take those kind of opportunities. I mentioned Tom Kettlecamp taking me to Honduras when I was a sophomore or a junior here at Houghton. Took a chance. Went to Honduras. Learned about international sport. Took that opportunity. Now I should tell you that my interaction with the NFL started because of a young lady I met at spring training. She worked for the Miami Marlins, transferred over to work for the Miami Dolphins, called me up and said, hey, I'm taking a leave of absence from the Dolphins to be the volunteer coordinator for the Super Bowl. Would you be interested in bringing kids to the Super Bowl like you bring kids to spring training? No, I want nothing to do with this. Yeah, I mean, take those opportunities. If somebody offers you that opportunity, there are incredible opportunities in any sport industry that you, any part of the sport industry that you want to be a part of. So, I guess the first thing is take it, get experience, and take a chance. Long-winded answer to your question.
That's great.
So we got about 5 more minutes. Anybody else have any questions? Yes, sir.
What do you see as the effects of NIL on the sports industry?
So, how do I say this?
Just say it.
I think it's a disaster.
Thank you.
So I mentioned I coach at the smallest, has the smallest budget in the FCS football program. The only thing that we have in our town is a place called Sammy's. And Sammy's is a sandwich shop, right? And my joke with the football guys is, so did you get your Sammy sandwich this week, right? Because that's your NIL. So I'm gonna speak heresy in the last few minutes here. I honestly think we've gotten to a point where we have to make a divorce between big-time athletics and higher education. I had the opportunity a few years ago to go to the Final Four when it was in New Orleans. And I had a student I taught at Niagara University. And I had a student from Niagara University who was on the coaching staff. I'm not going to tell you what the school was, but one of the schools that was in the Final Four. Those guys had not been on their campus in 6 weeks. They played their last two, I shouldn't say they'd been on campus to switch suitcases, right? They played their last two conference games on the road. They went directly from the conference games to the conference championship, won the conference championship, went to the first two rounds of the NCAA tournament, went to the Final Four, went to the championship. How do you look me in the eye? And I know it's different here, so I'm not making a comment about here. But how do you look me in the eye and tell me that student athlete is what those individuals are? They are athlete students, and when you get that backwards, it goes back to the comment I made earlier about those guys that think they're going to the league. What's your plan B? And none of them have a plan B because they've been told all their lives that they're going to be something special. So I think that there's a lot of things at play. So there's the National Labor Relations Board ruling that athletes are employees. That will irk me if a 18-year-old football center makes more money than I do. I mean, I've got 20 plus years on the academic side of life. That doesn't make sense to me. The economics don't make sense. I don't think people are educated on what NIL is and its impact. I think you definitely have a right to yourself, your name, your image, your likeness. I mean, you definitely have that. But the way it's being used, I guess, is the best word that I can say. It is detrimental to college athletics. Our football coach at UTM is the father of the backup quarterback at the University of Alabama. That kid comes to campus when he's on break, drives around in a huge Dodge Ram pickup truck, all tricked out, part of his NIL deal. He's 19 years old. He's got no idea what it means to be responsible. And we've given him this income, this toy, these accolades, and you're a backup quarterback. And what's it going to do? What's it going to do to us as an FCS school? We're going to end up being a Division III program.
Welcome.
Hey, so I've always thought that two of the greatest attributes of a leader is your willingness to be transparent and your ability to inspire others. So I appreciated those two aspects of what you had to share today. Your willingness to be transparent. And I hope that you all were inspired at some level today to think beyond Hope. So on behalf of our students at Hope University, here's a branded portfolio for you, and we hope you use it proudly. And as you're networking, give you an opportunity to tell a little bit about Hope University. Thank you so much for coming out. Dr. Davis will be in, I think it's Monday, March 19th, with Dr. Thayer in the senior capstone for Rec Wellness Management. So he's back on campus next month, making himself available. Thank you, Dr. Borchert, for allowing
I
your
hope
class
that's
to be
not
here.
the date, because
That-
March 19th is a
22nd,
Tuesday.
somewhere in that
And I'm
range.
going to be in Florida. So, but I did tell Faye I was coming back at the end of March.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll be up here for a couple minutes if anybody has any questions.
That's great. And if you're in this class, if you would be sure to make